After an intervention of former President George W. Bush, Brett Kavanaugh will become a Supreme Court judge for life, unless something completely unforeseen happens. Now, conservatives, Republicans everywhere, Alex Jones' audience everywhere, they are regarding this as a magnificent victory against the left and the Me Too movement and a big win in this culture war. But don't get played. Consider the risks. Consider the dangers. Now, as a Bush fellow traveler who went to Yale and who is possibly a member of the Skull and Bones fraternity, Mr. Kavanaugh brings with him baggage, okay? And it's not just his party days that supposedly never happened in prep school, in college, and so on and so forth. And sure, after so many decades, you can't prove anything about what happened in his private life in school. The testimony is too little, too late. So we can't know if he was guilty or not. And so, but we have to consider his whole career and the network that he's in, and the whole Bush sphere of influence and the career he made under Bush. And then Kavanaugh even smoothed things over for the Clintons when Vince Foster died. And these sort of things. And I remember a time when InfoWars, for example, didn't play the left versus right game, and they told their audiences that the Bushes and the Clintons were, the Bushes and the Clintons were much closer than people thought. You had Skull and Bones candidates run against each other in the presidential race. Remember that? Remember that when Bush ran against a fellow Bonesman, Mr. Kerry. And those days are over, unfortunately. We just get the whole left versus right war over at InfoWars and other places. So we know how the game is played at these prep schools and these colleges, right? You have to do certain things. You have to party hard, and you have to make these established circles that you want to join, Skull and Bones, whatever, this whole establishment circle. You have to make them trust you. So you have to do certain things, right? And certain evidence might be collected. This is how the game is played. This is how every intelligence agency plays the game. So, and we've seen this with the Clintons too. Not just Bill, but also Hillary. Okay? Hillary for a long time, she's been dogged by rumors that she's bisexual, and then she's also very aggressive in her private life, just as Bill used to be. And so this is a universal problem. This is not just the Republicans. This is just everyone, potentially. And so if you want to join this big, scary establishment, you have to do certain things. You have to prove that you have the right mindset, that you can treat other people in a certain way, that you're loyal to this new group that you want to join. And so if somebody, theoretically, just hypothetically, has solid evidence against Kavanaugh, that evidence is probably in a safe somewhere. And he's on notice now. Kavanaugh knows. I mean, his life was almost ruined by these proceedings, by these accusations, and the public hearing and all that. So he's scared for life. If somebody has something, if somebody really has something, his old friends or whatever, or powerful circles, if somebody has something against him, he is under control, and he will be under control for life in this scenario, in the Supreme Court. Now, does that sound like a great victory for conservative Americans? Does that sound like a victory against the evil establishment? No, because the higher you get, the more you realize there's only one deep state, there's only one empire, and it controls the entire political sphere. So, Alex Jones and others, they should know, and they do know, that that George W. Bush was not really a conservative. He was an establishment guy, and the national debt became more, and the budgets became bigger, and the rules became more, and all that stuff. And so why should we trust Kavanaugh? Why should we trust this man when everything points towards that this man should not be trusted? And I'm not speaking about his these private life party allegations from back in the old days. I mean his career, what he's done for the Bush campaign when they were about to lose the presidential race. And then there was the recount and all of that. And so if you get the blessing and the trust of George W. Bush and this entire Skull and Bones network, I don't trust that guy. I don't trust that guy at all. And his Kavanaugh's explanations that he was a virgin forever and he drank a beer every now and then and all that. Well, if he did party hardy, then there's no telling what kind of a security risk this man is. That somebody could control him and run him. Now, of course, you might argue that when you join the Supreme Court, you're under total control anyway. I mean, if you suddenly go against the establishment, then you're as good as dead. Sure, you might say that, but we're talking about Kavanaugh here, and that's a scary, scary thing. And when we're talking about this so-called culture war, this left versus right, there's two Americas now, or there's several Americas now, and they hate each other because of this ongoing media baloney from InfoWars, stuff they never did in the old days. And so consider this so-called victory that's now being celebrated. Consider the so-called victory. What are the ramifications? What are the mid-range and long-term effects of this? A lot of women, and if you don't remember, they're half of the country. A lot of women and young people and all kinds of people, they're watching this now and they're thinking in this, simplistic kind of way. Oh my God, there's this gaggle of slimy capitalist men, and they get away with everything, and they protect each other. And it's not just, it's Trump, it's Kavanaugh, and it's these other people. And so we can't even tell how many millions and millions of Americans are going to be affected by this Kavanaugh confirmation. How many millions are going to look at this, interpret it in the wrong way because they don't know about the larger structures of the empire and the hidden power structures. They're looking at this, and it seems to confirm leftist bias and socialist propaganda. Oh, see, the commies were right. The socialists were right. These evil old boys, they're just about money and raping women and getting away with it. And so that's what many people will be thinking right now, and this is bad for conservatives. A lot of people are thinking, oh my God, we need to go full-on socialism if we ever want to beat this disgusting criminal old boys network. So, as you probably know, the demographics are not so good for conservatives. A lot of people are getting older, or they have already passed away, and the younger generation with the migrants and all that tends to go into the direction of the left. Now, of course, the establishment, the empire, the one deep state that exists, they can decide which way this is going because they just put money into whatever they want. They can put more money this week into the left, and next week they can put more money into the right. And this is only going to change when we get smarter. So this might backfire in a bad way, this whole Trump thing and this whole Kavanaugh thing, right? So of course we see a boost for the Republicans right now, and this might even save the Republicans in the midterms, and could save in the long run the next term for Trump, sure. But think beyond the next 6 years, right? If you get the backlash of all of that Trump insanity and Kavanaugh insanity and other insanity, people have a memory, you know? And so this might actually harm conservatives and harm patriotic thinking and constitutionalism, harm it in the long run, and even in the midterm, not the election, but this might be very harmful. And it doesn't help. It doesn't help that, you know, Alex Jones's ex-wife is leveling all kinds of accusations against this guy, how unhinged he really is in private life, and how aggressive and all of that. So a certain audience is going to look the other way, and many people are just supporting Trump through all of this. Many people are just supporting Kavanaugh through all of this because they're scared. They want to fight the left. They don't want to lose. So you're being asked, prodded, maybe even a bit forced to stick up for Trump and to stick up for Kavanaugh. And thereby you're discrediting yourself, and thereby you are planting the seeds of your downfall. Okay? So be very, very aware of that stuff. Now, the intervention of George W. Bush is something that's creepy. So reportedly, George W. Bush picked up the phone and phoned a couple of senators, and then they flipped or whatever, or they stood behind Kavanaugh. Think about what network that is. Think about what leverage, you know, might exist to make these senators go a certain way. So then we had one female senator. We had this one female senator, Susan Collins. And Susan Collins is in the Bush family inner circle. Just like Kavanaugh is in the Bush family inner circle. Isn't that creepy? And we almost got a Democratic president at some point. Mr. John Kerry, we almost got a Democratic president, a so-called leftist, who was also a member of Skull and Bones. He was a part of the gang. So, we've had at least two Skull and Bones members in the Supreme Court before. This was Morrison Remick Waite, and it was Potter Stewart. And from what we've seen in a superficial examination of those two, they were establishment players. They didn't stand out in a certain way, right? They didn't have any obvious scandals, but still, it's very, very creepy if you know the history of Bones. And then you had more Bonesmen at the Supreme Courts of certain U.S. states. And then you have, of course, many more people who are practicing law. You have people in the security services. You have people in the military. So there's a certain circle of Bonesmen, and of course they can recruit other people. And let's not forget, Kavanaugh used to pick judges. A lot of judges. And he picked the judges the way basically the Bush family wanted. So there's a reservoir. There's a certain gang, group, whatever. You also have the Georgetown Gang that's really close to the Trump family and administration. You have some other centers of power, and they all function kind of the same way. And that's how they get their people into these positions, like the Supreme Court. So, at some point in the 80s and 90s, we lost track of Skull and Bones members. We don't have any membership lists since that time. So we don't even know what other Bonesmen are running around. Officially, Kavanaugh was a member of a rather boring society in college. I was occupied with drinking. But if Bones at some point, Skull and Bones at some point adopted more or better clandestine methods in recruiting members, it's entirely possible that Kavanaugh is a Bonesman. He's too close to Bush. And so this is a victory for nobody. It's a victory for nobody. If Kavanaugh was a Democrat, same guy but a Democrat, I'd be criticizing him the same way. I'd be criticizing this guy in the same way. I would warn about him the same way. And it's not entirely clear why it was attempted to derail his nomination with decades-old accusations about sexual crimes. Now, too many decades have passed. The testimony is too shaky. You know, they can't remember this, can't remember that. Other people, they can't confirm this, they can't confirm that. It's a problem, and I've talked about this before in my last video on Kavanaugh. Sexual abuse is a huge problem, and usually women are the target, but there's crazy, evil, dangerous women too, right? It's just there's bad people everywhere, and there's good people everywhere. But sexual abuse is a huge problem, and you can't just make this go away. You can't just ignore it, because then it's going to come back at you. If you ignore it, if you treat it as a left versus right issue, if you just attack this whole idea of getting the truth out, if you just reject that, you might score a few political points. You might score a few media points and be popular with your crowd. But how many people are you going to drive into the hands of the socialists? Because a victim, if a victim and people the victim knows, if they understand, oh my God, this is how America works. You know, these insiders, these guys, they can get away with everything. There's no justice. If you speak out, especially in the old days, if you spoke out, you would be ostracized. You would be attacked in many different ways. You could be sued for libel or whatever. You might lose court cases because of manipulation and corruption. So, if you ignore all that, it's going to come back at you. It's going to come back at you. Because many people are going to find out how things went down and how people were protected. And that's going to drive people into the hands of the socialists. I mean, well, with socialist politics, they're as bad as the Republicans when it comes to their private lives and cover-ups. But in that area, the left has better marketing. Okay, and this is a huge missed opportunity on the right wing. The right wing should be the one saying, okay, we protect women, we stand up for women, we want to recruit as many people for common sense as possible. We have ideas, we have the methods to protect everybody and get the bad guys. You know, you need to be a group that's able to protect, because otherwise, many women and guys and whatever, they're going to run to the socialists because they think the socialists are going to protect them. And they think that if we just turn this into a Me Too hysteria, and now we intend to punish everybody who makes a compliment or who gets out of line in a little way, and we want to create some sort of police state. That's going to be dangerous. That's going to be dangerous, right? If many people think they will only be safe and only get justice if they achieve some sort of socialist tyranny. So, Kavanaugh served as staff secretary at the executive office of President Bush. The recount in Florida presidential elections in the year 2000s. Lots of manipulation, lots of scary stuff. And so, yeah, this is the history of that man, Kavanaugh. It's not a victory. Be careful, and also be careful with the media. If they use this in a certain way, that's going to damage everybody in the long run. Right? So, I didn't think I'd see the day when Alex Jones became sort of an addendum to Fox News to speak to younger people and slightly younger people and more conspiracy-inclined crowd. Jones used to tell people useful things. Get out of the left-right paradigm. It's a controlled system. No matter what thing you choose that's offered to you, it's all controlled, and you need to break out of that. And there's been this whole campaign over the last years about feminism, and this incredible entanglement of silly arguments or short-lived arguments. Now, stick to the basics. Stick to equal rights, equal pay, respect, and stability when it comes to feminism. Stay away from anything that goes into narcissistic, group narcissistic and psychopathic territory, right? There's no hatred against men per se. And don't contaminate that with an equally terrible discussion about sexual abuse, okay? It's going to come back to haunt you. If you like this video, please comment down below. Tell me what you think. Please like this video, share it, and support us on Patreon.